Hey there, folks. Dustin here with another Commissioner in a Car episode. We're going to get started here shortly, but we're going to let a chance for people to log on and see what's going on. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the absentee ballots going out and a little voter registration preview, but I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty with what it comes down to. What's a constituted party in New York? Why the 50,000 vote threshold matters so much, and why you may hear about that a little bit more in the next couple of weeks, and what how parties are determined, and what ballot order, how they're determined in ballot order, because that's all happening this year. So I'm going to share this video a couple of times, and it's not Burger King this time, David. I'm not at Burger King. I'm at a undisclosed location. I'm not going to tell you where I'm at this time. It's secret. I'm on a secret mission this time. That's why. No, I'm not. I'm just getting ready to go watch some football but I wanted to do this video before I do that and get it out there. Yeah, well, so we'll have a little bit of time here I'm just going to share this video a couple of times on the various groups so people can see it. And, yeah, so let's see here. So I hope you got some questions ready for me this year or this week. Lots of stuff going on. And we're 16 days away from Election Day. That Election Day is November 6th. And it will polls will be open from 6 to 9 p.m. And we're past the registration deadline, but we're almost caught up on registration at the Onondaga County Board of Elections. So you should be able to go online and check, unless you did your registration change in the last couple of days of the registration deadline. You should be able to go online and check and see if you are register to vote and where your polling place is. That's an important thing as well. You can also yes, no, I'm not good at keeping secrets, Josh. That's the problem. Not much of a secret if I'm telling you about it, but I'm not good at keeping secrets. That's why I'm an elections commissioner, because I give out the information, except for one thing. I do not give out how people voted because I have no idea how people voted. There's no way to know that. But I give out who voted, and I give out where people voted, and I give out what the totals were. So I don't really live in secrets, so to speak. All right. Well, we're gonna get started here. So. And then I'll start answering some questions. Here we are 16 days away from the election. And this year is a governor's race. You know all about it. You've seen it. There was a primary, but also there's the regular election is going on. Well, what people don't understand is in governor's years are very important to the electoral backbone of our system. And why is that? Well, in New York State, we determine who the major parties are and who are the defined parties or recognized parties based on their vote totals on the governor's line every 4 years. So what do I mean by that? So when I talk about the major parties, obviously we're talking about Republican and Democrat. Those are the top two parties. And they're determined that by the number of votes cast on their lines every 4 years. So if someone were to get more votes on another line, they would be one of the top two parties. And what does that determine? Well, that determines how we actually do elections in New York State. As you know, we have bipartisan elections boards that are split down the middle between... Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Thought I had this on a do not disturb mode, but that is not what happened. So I'm back. All right. Sorry, I hope I didn't miss anybody. So I was saying about the 50,000 vote mark. we are in the middle of this governor's election, and the top two races determine our recognized parties that take over the election, the bipartisan election boards throughout New York State. There's not much chance of that changing this year, but it can. This is not, it is not written into New York State law that the Democrats and Republicans are the ones who control the election board. What is written is the top two parties control the election boards, and that has at times gotten kind of close. There was a time where the conservatives almost overcome the Republicans, and there was polls earlier this year that suggested that if Cynthia Nixon continued a campaign on the working families line, that she could get close to Mark Molinaro's totals on the Republican lines and possibly interrupt things. Another big number that you're going to hear about over the next week or two is 50,000 votes. 50,000 votes is a magic number in New York State politics, because if you get 50,000 votes on a governor's line, then you are what's called a recognized party. That means that your people can register to vote under your banner. People and your candidates will have ballot access under those party lines for the next 4 years. 4 years ago, we added two parties. Up until 2014, the recognized parties in New York State were the Democrat and Republican Party, as well as the conservative, Green, Working Families, Conservative, Green, and Working Families and Independence Party. 4 years ago, the Cuomo campaign started a party called the Women's Equality Party, and the Astorino campaign started a party called the Stop Common Core Party, which has now changed its name to the Reform Party. And if any party does not get 50,000 votes, they drop off those recognized party lists. However, there's always parties trying to get those 50,000 votes. 4 years ago, the Stop Common Core, which became the Reform Party, and the Women's Equality Party got barely over the 50,000 vote threshold. And they became recognized parties where candidates can get their lines down the ballot. And the third was Independence Party. And they got about 75,000, 80,000 votes. So, which was the lowest vote total that they've had in a governor's race in a very long time. So, that 50,000 vote threshold is going to become very important, and it's really important for a couple of parties that are trying to get recognized party status: the Libertarian Party and the SAM Party. The Libertarian Party has Larry Sharpe running for governor, and the SAM Party is former Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner running for governor. And the main points of these parties running for governor, I'm sure they're going to say that, they want to win. But barring an electoral upset that is heretofore unforeseen, what they're really trying to do is get 50,000 votes. If they get 50,000 votes on these lines, then they will become a recognized party in New York State. Now, 4 years ago, the Libertarian Party got in the 40,000 vote range. So it's very possible that they're going to get 50,000 votes, which will add them to the recognized parties. And there was another group called the Sapien Group that got 40,000 votes. I don't know what they are. I wish I could tell you. They were out of nowhere. They're candidates from New York City. That's where they got most of their votes. And they've kind of gone away. But the SAM Group could also get this 50,000 votes. And with Governor Cuomo having such a large lead in almost every opinion poll out there, you might see opportunities for protest votes. But parties could drop off as well. So if the Libertarian or SAM Party get enough votes to get on, there could be parties that also drop off. As I said, the Reform Party and the Women's Equality barely got over 50,000 votes last time. And the Independence Party was lower as well. Now, the Reform Party has cross-endorsed Mark Molinaro and the independents and the the Women's Equality Party cross-endorsed Mario Cuomo. I'm sorry, Andrew Cuomo, not Mario. I'm that old. That's what I remember. So it cross-endorsed Andrew Cuomo. So it's possible that one of those may not get their 50,000 votes. Although usually once a party is established, they tend to get more their second time around than their first time around. So I think it's possible that not only will we be keeping every party, but adding maybe 2 parties to our ballot, which is going to make our ballot longer every year. And it's going to create some havocs for the boards of elections when it comes to fitting all of our lines on this ballot. Personally, I believe that the 50,000 vote threshold is too small. Or we should change that to 100,000 votes because giving party access to some of these small parties who only cross-endorse major party candidates is really a fool's gold on the electoral system. It encourages fusion voting, encourages these cross endorsements, and I think it helps confuse voters. But if we didn't want to raise the 50,000 vote threshold, I think another common sense electoral reform would be to require registration numbers, minimum registration numbers of a party after they get their 50,000 votes. And why do I say that? Well, the Reform Party and the Women's Equality Party have minuscule registration numbers throughout the state, but even in Onondaga County. I know those numbers kind of off the top of my head, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Their registration numbers are so low, they're and they're not growing. They're a certain number of people are in them. They don't have registration drives. They don't have local committees. Everything is handled out of their statewide committees in Albany. And they're not really about getting people to register their party. They're about using their lines to cross-endorse major party candidates, with some minor exceptions. One of them being Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh got the Reform Party line, and he wasn't a major party candidate. So we've seen, there are some exceptions to the rules, but for the most part, they cross-endorse major party candidates, but they do nothing to actually register voters in their party and have a particular party ideology other than replicating the major party's nominees. So another reform, instead of moving it up to 100,000 votes, would be to require a certain threshold of minimum registrations 2 years after becoming a major party to keep their major party status. So you get 50,000 votes, but you also have to register, so many votes in every county. For example, the Libertarian Party, because we do track registration for the Libertarian Party, has over 400 voters registered in Onondaga County, much more than the Stop Common Core or Reform Party and the Women's Equality Party. So they're actually about getting people registered in their party and promoting a real different view for the voters to see. Now, this in no way endorses their view, because I don't agree with much libertarian ideals. But also, the Green Party operated the same way. They're not endorsing major party candidates. They're about growing their party and growing registrations. Again, I don't really endorse their views as well, but both of those parties are actually acting like third parties, as opposed to, just replicating the governors, you're replicating the major parties' nominees and all the way down the ticket. So that 50,000 vote mark is going to be very crucial on election night. There's going to be a lot of people watching to see how many parties get 50,000 votes. So they're recognized parties next year, and people can start registering in those parties and also have dedicated ballot lines, which will allow them to have more and more candidates on local ballots. But also, party order is determined as well. We talk about, the Democrats always say row A all the way because they're on row A because they always get the most votes on the governor's ballot. And except for during the Pataki years, it was the Republican Party who got the most votes during, most of the Pataki years. So, although the first term of the Pataki, I'm really getting nerdy out here. The first term of Pataki, the first 4 years, because Pataki won a very close election and ended up winning his ballot on the strength of minor party votes, he did not get the most votes on the Republican versus Democrat. So the Democrats remained row A for the first 4 years of the Pataki tenure. So that's why ballot totals on the governor's line is very important, because not only is it going to determine whether you're a party or not, but in between the parties, it will have the ballot order. So, it's very important. So I'm going to get to some of the questions here that are out there. But before I do, I want to, I touched a little bit about registration in my post this week. We are seeing something phenomenal at the Board of Elections, and we're not quite caught up. We're going to be caught up probably Monday or Tuesday, and I'll be able to go through some numbers and really do a deep dive in this. But we are seeing some incredible registration numbers, things that we have not seen in a non-presidential year in forever. This is the biggest midterm we've seen in a while. In fact, we're going to have more registered voters at the end of the day than we did in 2016, which is amazing. We never grow in voters. We always shrink and then grow again when we get to the presidential, and it's kind of an ebb and flow type thing. But we have grown the last couple of years, and you see a lot more people registering, and a lot of people registering this year. And most of them registering since August 2nd. So we have seen an incredible amount of forms that came in for people to register this year, and we are going to analyze that data. And whether these people turn out, it's going to be important. But if you're registering this year, you have to think this is not something that normally happens. If you're registering this year, you have to think that they're going to participate this year. And so there's a little note to campaigns out there. You better be talking to these voters because they're obviously motivated enough to get registered to vote, and now it's your job to get them out to vote. So I'm going to do a deep dive into registration next Sunday. I have a whole presentation plan. I may not even be in the car. I may be at home because I want to show you some charts. I know. Commissioner in a car in my house. I don't know. We'll see. But there's some incredible numbers going on, things that are going to shape Onondaga County for years to come, and also shape the electorate this year, which is something I think is very exciting. And absentee ballots did go out this week at the Board of Elections. They finally went out on Wednesday. We had a late court order that came down on Tuesday, caused confusion. The judge waited 12 days to issue this court order, which is against the law. The 16104- of election law says that you have to render an issue within 1 day. If you're hearing a case within the 35-day window, they did not. And then when they issued the order, it caused even more confusion because the order itself gave parties 7 more days to determine who was on the ballot, which would have thrown us into major chaos. Luckily, the State Board of Elections went to court and got a stay of that order on Wednesday, which allowed us to send out ballots based on a previous certification. So we sent out absentee ballots with everybody's name on it on Tuesday. This was the Supreme Court justices were fighting in court. And then on Friday, we got even further clarification from an appeal that was going on. The judges overturned the original judge's order. So the ballots that have gone out with everybody's name on it are correct. There is no change to those at this time. That that appeal could be appealed as well. But we are operating as if there will be no change to that. It's been a very frustrating few weeks on this, and it started with the working families changing their ballot to give it to Governor Cuomo. We were ready to send out absentee ballots on October 5th, and because of that and this pending court case, we ended up waiting almost a week and a half to be able to send out absentee ballots. But we got them out at the 20-day mark. Our promise to our voters is always around 3 weeks. So we got them out at the time that we could get them out. And while I'm not happy that we had to wait, I am happy that they're finally out the door. And I think at this point, we're operating as if there will be no more changes to the ballot. And by God, there better not be. Because we are very late in getting our machines together for the election. Our voting machines are, have to be programmed. We have to print up the ballots that go to the polling place, which is thousands and thousands of more ballots. We're probably going to end up printing about 300,000 ballots to go to the polling places. So we are, there's a lot of stuff to get done and get ready in the next 16 days. My staff, both sides staff, but our staff at the Board of Elections on Republicans and Democrats have been outstanding. They've been working 12-hour days to get caught up on this registration, but also, they're going to be working even longer days to get the election ready to go. So they're incredible, and I want to thank them. So I'm going to take some questions now, and I know David Harding has always been good to ask some questions for us here. But I'll go into the questions now. Oh, okay. So 50,000 votes is why Howie Hawkins always runs. That's correct. Howie runs on the green line. In fact, Howie Hawkins from Syracuse. We have two Syracuse candidates for governor. David heard my ESPN alert. They have. He does that to get his 50,000 votes. In fact, he was the one who got them 50,000 votes when they lost it before. The Green Party had a little bit of yo-yo back during the 2000s about whether they were on the ballot and off the ballot. They got on the ballot when they ran Grandpa Munster. You remember Grandpa Munster back in, I think it was 2002 or 2000, they ran him. He got 50,000 votes. But the next time somebody else ran for governor and they didn't get their 50,000 votes, so Howie ran and has run for governor the last few times and gotten the 50,000 votes and got well over 100,000 votes last time. So I think the Green Party is probably here to stay as a recognized party in New York State and will continue to do that. Were the Sapiens reptilians, David? It's quite possible. I don't know. I've never seen a Sapien registered voter in Onondaga County, so it's possible they were reptiles, but they were probably just people who started a party in New York City that felt they could get a ballot line and almost did, but yet because they didn't, they probably disbanded, and I'm sure some of them have filtered into some of these other parties. What are the consequences for the judge who violated the law with regard to the state judge's race? Don't know. We haven't decided how we're proceeding with that. That's something that we're going to wait until after the election because, well, what's important right now is the election. But obviously, state law was pretty clear. A one-day ruling is needed. Sometimes judges wait 2 days, and that kind of thing is fine. The judge gave out a reason that the reason he waited 12 days was his law clerk was sick and he was in a trial. But that's really, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is not really an excuse. Election law cases take priority. They take priority not just because I think elections are special, but because we're under special time constraints. The election happens on November 6th, no matter what. And every other case does not have that kind of deadline. So the judge should have given us the 1 day ruling, 2 day ruling, 12 days is amazing. It's not something I've ever seen before. And we're going to weigh, whether we make a formal complaint about that or not. But also, we're going to have to, the courts are the ones who decide whether there's any action. I don't think there will be any action in particular, but hopefully the courts will also remind judges about this one-day rule and going forward. And we're going to make sure that they understand how much of a bad predicament it put us in. Well, my friend Greg, stickers. Most important election day prep, though, of course, are I voted stickers, right? Well, you're going to get I voted stickers in Onondaga County again. Woohoo! Yay! Great. Look, last year, the governor in the New York State provided I voted stickers to every board of elections, and we are going to put, we have some remaining. We're putting those out, but we did invest in I voted stickers for the general election. We didn't do them for the primaries, and the reason for that should be obvious. But the reason that we don't do I voted stickers for a primary election is because not every voter participates in a primary. And although almost every voter was eligible this last primary, we couldn't predict that. Primaries are partisan elections, but when we're spending money at the Board of Elections, we try to spend it as wisely as possible where every party is and every voter is taken care of. So we didn't feel like investing in I voted stickers for a primary was the right thing to do, but we are doing stickers for the general election. I can't wait to see all of you with your stickers on, posting it on social media. They got stickers, getting free coffee, and just the love of stickers is, I'm a convert. Let's get them out there. Stickers for everyone. Well, not everyone, only if you voted. So stickers for you if you're a voter. David also asked, should third parties, I thought I saw a thing in there, should third parties be allowed to participate at the Board of Elections? Well, that is the charge of the two major commissioners to also protect third parties as well. And I know I've given out a lot of information to third party candidates and to their campaign structures because I help any voter that comes in the door. One of the reasons why third parties are not having a formal role at the Board of Elections is because, well, their registration numbers are so little. We're talking about, in Onondaga County, there's 107,000 Democrats and 89,000 Republicans, and yes, that has done, that has grown. That gap has grown. But Greens are less than 1,000, and conservatives are around 3,000. They could not get inspectors to the polls if they wanted to. That's why the major parties are there to do that. But we also are there to protect the minor parties as well. So they have a role. They have commissioners. I consider myself, a guardian of the voter, not a guardian of my party. And of course, the judges will make sure that we're doing that as well. So, what is the deadline to request an absentee ballot? The deadline to mail in an absentee ballot, and what is the deadline to hand in an absentee ballot in person to the BOE? Great questions there. Absentee ballots are gone out right now. You can go out, go to our website, ongov.net/elections, print up an application, mail it in, and we will mail you a ballot. You have to mail it in by 7 days before the election, because that is the time frame that we will guarantee that we will then mail it out to you and you get it hopefully in time if you're local. So that 7 day is important for mailing in. However, if you were to come in person at the Board of Elections, you could do that anytime, now, or you can do it, anytime up until the day before Election Day. Come in, and it's one-stop shopping. You fill out your application, you get your ballot, you can vote right then, and you can turn it in right then and be done with it. If you're going to mail your ballot back to us, you have to mail it by the day before election. So not the day of election, the day before. It has to be postmarked the day before. However, let's say you're going out of town, but your spouse is going to the poll, or your roommate, or somebody you know is going to the poll, and you didn't get a chance to put it in the mail. They can bring the ballot to the polls with them when they vote on election day. So a ballot can be turned in at the polls or the Board of Elections on election day if for some reason you did not get a chance to mail it in the day before the election. So that's absentee ballots. Should the Dems consider doing what the Reform Party does, where the Reform Party members and unaffiliated can vote in primaries for a hybrid open primary? No. Now, this is my opinion. This is just my opinion as a Democrat and as a party activist. But no, they should not. And I'll tell you why. This Reform Party allowing non-enrolled voters into primaries has cost the Board of Elections, all boards of elections, tons of money, because we now have to print up ballots as if these non-enrolled voters are going to come to the polling place, and we have such little participation over, when we have like 70,000 or so voters in the that are non-enrolled, as opposed to the 100 voters that were enrolled in the Reform Party. We had to print up ballots as if they were coming out, and we had about, just a several hundred voters out of those 70,000 votes. People who are not enrolled in a political party, for the most part, don't care about voting in primaries. That's why they're not enrolled in a political party. Now, yes, there are some people who don't want to enroll in a political party but want to be able to choose the party nominees. I disagree with that. I think a party is about an ideology. It should be about an ideology. And party members should choose their standard bearer of who's going to represent them in the general election. There are avenues onto the ballot for people who are not enrolled in a party. There are avenues on the ballot for people to vote for them. Ben Walsh, mayor of Syracuse, won a race without a major party nomination. Now, that may be abnormal, but it is possible. And I don't believe non-enrolled should vote in party primaries. However, I do believe that New York should make it easier for people to enroll in a party if they want to, and not have this 1 year sequester that it is, where you have to make your enrollment change 30 days before the general election for the entire next year. So I would like a 90-day window. I think that would be better. It is something that I've personally advocated for. And I hope that maybe the legislature next year might take a look at it. I know they were looking at it after the presidential primary in 2016, but nothing has gone anywhere. And this is a great question. David says, when the BOE does its next technology upgrade, should the poll books be replaced by electronic tablets? Is this a good idea? Because there would be a lack of a paper trail. Well, yes and no. I'm actually for electronic poll books, and I'm for them for several reasons. I think it would allow us to register voters later. We'd have a later voter registration deadline. It would save a lot of work on the back end, and it would be something that is, I think, good for the voters and good for the BOE. And if done in the right way, like we do with our machines, they're not connected to the internet. They're not hackable. However, they're not allowed in New York State right now. Our county piloted an electronic poll book thing a few years back. A couple other counties have piloted electronic poll books. Electronic poll books do work in other places, but not in New York State. We haven't changed that law. We should change that law. In fact, the elections commissioners, both bipartisan agree that electronic poll books is if it was allowed, not mandatory, but allowed, should be the discretion of the county committees to use it. Why would it help us? Well, there still would be a trail, so to speak, as people would still sign in the book. It would just sign in electronically. So it would create a trail, and we'd have a verifiable signature. So the paper trail, so to speak, isn't as important there as it is with creating votes, because there's usually not there's not anything that we would record in a poll book that wouldn't normally be recorded in a paper poll book. We would capture their signature. We would check them in. But also, if a poll book was at a polling place, we would be able to see right away if they were at the wrong polling place and send them to the right one without them having to call the Board of Elections, because the full county database would be loaded onto a polling book. And if we find them in the book, but they're not supposed to vote in that polling place, they wouldn't be allowed to vote, but they would get directions to go to the right polling place on that election day. Or if they weren't registered to vote at all, they'd get an opportunity to go get a court order to do this. Or get an affidavit ballot. I think electronic poll books would be great. And also on the back end, it would make our certification process so much easier. Instead of the entire office doing what's called voter history, where we scan in by voter, each voter we scan in whether they voted or not, off the physical poll books. It takes the entire office about a week to do. We'd literally be able to find that out in 30 seconds. It would save so many man hours. It would be, now we would have to have poll books on, we would also save in the printing of poll books, but we may have to have poll books ready to go to print and get out to a polling place in case an electronic thing happened where the battery ran out or they were unable to use the electronic poll books. So we would still have to have emergency systems in place to support it. And how does the BOE decide how many polling places we have in Onondaga County? Has anyone suggested reducing the number to save costs or have less confusion as to where to vote on Election Day? Well, people always wonder whether we should reduce something to save cost or not. But I think having 180 polling places in Onondaga County is actually good. And the reason we have these numbers of polling places is to locate them in areas close to people where they live, especially in urban areas where many people are walking to their polling places as opposed to driving. In New York State, we have, and I use this term, in its dictionary sense, a liberal interpretation of how many polling places we should have, so people aren't driving 20 miles to be able to vote. That disenfranchises voters. We have rules in place, and I don't know the exact rule off the top of my head, but it's something along the lines of, if you're in an election district, your polling place can only be in a bordering election district. It can't be several election districts over. While in the suburbs, we tend to put 4, 5, 6 election districts into a polling place because more people drive in the suburbs. Inside the city, we see 1, 2, 3, at most, because people are walking there, and we try to have them located close to their homes. So while some would say, oh, well, if we had less polling places, there'd be less confusion of where to go. But on the other hand, there'd be more people disenfranchised because they weren't able to get to their polling place. Now, if we had early voting, there is some thought that if we had early voting and more people able to cast their vote before Election Day, we'd have less need for so many polling places for the volume. I'm not so sure about that. I still think we need the volume of polling places to allow for people who are unable to drive to get to the polls on Election Day. So we'll see. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up this Commissioner of the Car. We've had a nice long discussion. If you find this helpful, share it. I put this out there as a public service because I want people to lift the veil on the electoral process a little bit, and so people can see, what goes behind the scenes. We have 16 days until Election Day. Make sure you get out there. Check our website, ongov.net/elections, to see if you're registered to vote. You can check that throughout the county. Oh, you know what? I'm going to answer this one last question that David just put up about West Virginia allowing people to vote via smartphone. That is crazy and insane. I'm sorry. I'm a big technology guy. I love technology. I'm using my smartphone right now. But what West Virginia is doing sounds innovative, but it is full of so many holes. A lot of people say, well, if we can vote, if we can bank online, why can we bank online but not vote online? Well, it's a simple question. It's a simple answer to that. Anonymity. One of our biggest tenets to voting is to keep the votes anonymous. That nobody knows how you voted. Nobody can find out how you voted, to keep people from having political retribution or embarrassment or anything, and be able to go into that polling place and be able to make a choice based on what they want to do, and that choice is secret. Now, we have paper ballots, but there's nothing on those ballots identifying the person who cast that ballot. Once it's ripped out of the poll book and handed to the person, once they fill it out and goes into the machine, there's no way for us to know after we've handed that ballot to the person how they voted. In banking, for instance, every transaction you make is tied back to you and the account holder. And you do that because you want to prevent against fraud. And we're not talking about the fake in-person voter fraud that so many Republicans like to throw out there to justify horrible things like voter ID. No, I'm talking about like actual fraud, hacking of a voting system that allows people to vote via cell phones, via internet. That is way more easy for a nation state to be able to hack than you would ever be done in our current electoral system, which for the most part is pretty internet free. You can't actually get into a voting machine via remote access. So you'd have to have physical access to a voting machine and to be able to do anything with it. So yeah, no, while I would love for us to have an ability to make voting easier, I don't foresee how having paperless ballots is a good thing. So the electronic voting machines that we see, like Diebold has in Ohio and other things, where there's no paper trail, that's bad. And also internet voting, where we can't, either protect against anonymity or tie it back to a voter to protect against fraud. There's so many perils there that I don't see that as a good way to go for elections. I'd rather see us investing in things like early voting, automatic voter registration, these things that will make voting easier, but also keep it safe and anonymous. All right, so now I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for tuning into another Commissioner in the Car. Please share it and help people know about how that the election is coming, and that how they can get sit and vote. And please make sure you go out and vote yourself. It's a very important election, November 6th. Every election is important, but this could be an historic election. So be part of history. Come out and vote with us, and have your voice be heard. Thank you. Bye-bye.